He did it again. I'm Rachel, and here's my race ramblings for the Thermal Club IndyCar Grand Prix. We'll chat about the race, the broadcast, and the event itself because people have opinions about thermal, and I think I disagree with a lot of you, but we'll get into that later. First, let's get into my race rating. I have given that a 6 out of 10. It was not the most fun, but it wasn't horrific. The lead change that happened there with Alex Palou was sort of inevitable, unfortunately. There was a little bit of overtaking throughout, some pretty good little scraps here and there, but it wasn't too crazy. No cautions to mess anything up. The pits were pretty clean, which is like good but boring. Not my favorite race ever. Didn't hate it, but it was for sure a big improvement from last year, having it to be a real race this year. I hated last year. Didn't mind it this year. Let's chat about quali quickly. So Pato on pole, obviously that was his first time on pole since 2022, and I didn't realize it had been that long at all. I felt like he had a couple more in there, but I guess not. I mean, really, he hasn't had too many wins either. Some really great performances that just like don't play out like today. So I was surprised to hear that, but obviously a big step up from last weekend for Pato there. Didn't even get out of the first qualifying session last race, so it was great to see that big step up. Great for Lundgaard as well, shows that the McLaren was there. I expect to see them, based off at this, I expect to see them at other road circuits, which is they haven't been great on there in the past couple years, so that's exciting to see. Palou, Herta, Ericsson, and Rossi made up the rest of the Fast Six. I was excited to see Rossi out there. He's been qualifying better than I anticipated with the Ed Carpenter. The rest was a little bit anticipated when you factor out that the Penske's did horribly. The groups were also quite biased. Group 1 was much harder to get out of than Group 2, so with all that considered, this sort of made sense. And a great from Andretti, though Andretti are usually decent on road courses, usually better at streets than road courses necessarily, but with Herta and Ericsson up there, that's pretty good. Really bad for the Penske's, like I mentioned. Their highest up was Joseph Newgarden in P17, and let me double check here. I believe Scott McLaughlin was like nowhere. Hang on, I'm just fact checking myself. Yeah, Scott McLaughlin was P25 and Will Power was P21, so just they really didn't get it here this weekend, though I think they were having some hybrid issues. At least Scott McLaughlin did during the race. And Rossi had some hybrid issues, I heard, too, throughout the weekend, but he managed to get up there. So that's interesting. We'll see how that plays out. Maybe they just not get in the road circuits, right? But we had Schwartzman way at the back. Not a surprise given the weekend that he had with the fire there and everything. Happy he even got to qualify, to be honest. And then we'll get into the race here. So Palou wins again. I'm just like a little upset because I'm a Pato fan, but like really what can you expect? What can you expect? Like, he's just that guy. He's just that guy, and you know, like in the same way we were all more bored of Max Verstappen winning everything, we're gonna have to get used to that with Alex Palou, and we're just gonna have to sit back and admire it. Especially because like it really is him. Like, I don't know how he was so fast. He closed the gap. Once he overtook Christian Lundgaard, he closed the gap to Pato so quickly, and then made like a 7-second gap again so quickly. Like, and like he closed the gap in what, like 3-4 laps to Pato. That was crazy. Got him pretty quickly, though he did have a nice little bit of racing there with Lundgaard. Lundgaard held him off very well. Lundgaard had a great race. I was very impressed by him. Again, his ability to hold off Alex Palou. In the end, it was a bit for nothing, but I'm if things were different, if anything was different, he for sure would have won Pato the race with that. The little racing that they did have there when they were overtaking, that was beautiful. It's not often that you see real fights with Alex Palou in the same way a lot of people like don't fight Max Verstappen or didn't fight Max Verstappen in like 2023, especially when they feel like they're a bit lower down. People just give it up. They're like, whatever. A lot of people kind of start to do that with Alex Palou. I think people are like, well, this isn't my race. He's obviously going to win. So to see Lundgaard like have the guts to do that in only his second race with Aaron McLaren is very nice to see. I'm very impressed by him. Not that I didn't expect much, but I guess the 7 cars had some issues. Rossi obviously left for a reason, and Nolan Siegel isn't quite as quite on bar with Pato, so I thought maybe, I don't know, Pato's obviously a very talented driver, but now you can see he's not necessarily outperforming the car. And a lot of times he is, especially like Indy 500 last year, he outperformed the car, undoubtedly. You could say the same for Rossi, though. He was up there until he had the strategy issues, ran out of gas. But I don't know, I just wasn't expecting Lundgaard to be up there, so I'm very pleasantly surprised with that. Speaking of McLaren, Pato had a very good race up until there was nothing he could do. He didn't give it up too easily either, but just the pace in those tires, obviously, just like a strategy issue for McLaren there. I heard Pato speak, you don't know how the alternates are going to be, and obviously they were the tire to be on, and they just timed it well. Alex Palou, he had a sticker set. Nothing quite he could have done. I was kind of wondering, like, maybe if this was F1, I think that Pato could have stayed out and just never pitted and he would have won the race. But obviously because it's IndyCar and they have to pit for fuel as well as tires, wasn't really an option, so nothing he could have really done there. Penske's didn't really have much improvement. Joseph went up to P5 from P13, which is a decent recovery, but like really, that's not true. Joseph, my note's incorrect. Let's check that. Oh yeah. Bro, what the hell was I writing? Joseph up 5 to P13 from P17. So not much of an improvement there. Scott McLaughlin, of course, retired due to the hybrid issue, I believe. But was that in part also due to the little incident he had with Devlin DeFrancisco, which apparently they were fighting. They fight it after the race. Yeah. I like when they're a little feisty. Yeah, fight, be entertaining, get a viral clip going. Yeah, sucks for Scott McLaughlin. Obviously, he did well last race in St. Pete. They'll get back up there. I'm not worried about Penske really. Even if they do have an issue on road courses, like they obviously were fine on the streets of St. Pete, and they'll be fine on oval. So like it's not really a concern. Power was up from P21 to P6 though, so that was a great recovery. Great drive from him. You didn't really get to see much of it on the TV, but obviously he had a good race there. Then Prema had a bad weekend. Obviously the issues with Schwartzman, but he made up some time to 22 from 27, so there was a bit of an improvement there, but obviously Eilert had that crash right at the starts into Schwartzman, I believe it was, so that probably didn't help, and that just killed his race. He finished, but he was last, so not great there, obviously. Not much focus on the Andretti's once they got going there. Colton finished P4, Kirkwood P8. They both finished where they started, but again, they tend to do better on street circuits, so not concerned about that. Other than Alex Palou, I mean, like Scott Dixon started P11 up to P12 or P10, so not much improvement for him. The Ganassis weren't fantastic, except for Palou, of course. So can I say they're not fantastic? No, because obviously they were. Here's when I would talk about the championship. I apologize I don't have any graphics yet. School has been busy for me, but I'm done soon, so those will come soon within the next couple of races. I want to talk about the championship here, but they haven't updated it yet, and I don't want to do math. Maybe by the time we're done, they will update that, and we'll chat about that. If not, I will insert a clip here from later. For now, let's talk about the broadcast. Overall, that was an improvement from St. Pete. However, there are still some issues. Qualifying specifically was improved in the sense that they made the cutoff clear. You could very clearly see who was on track to improve and who was on track to be knocked out, but not during the lap. And that is the biggest issue. We need updates during the lap. You can't even tell when somebody's on a lap. You can't tell when they're in the pits. You can't tell how their lap is going, and that is an issue. We really need to get that figured out. I hated how it looked previously on NBC, but even that would be something. Like, we just need something. I feel like I'm watching qualifying blind, and I don't enjoy that. The race was okay. We'll talk about that in a second. The race itself was okay. Not much of a difference from last weekend. I, again, would like to see interval timing. I can't stand pure leader driving. Alternate it. NBC had the same issue. I need to see interval timing. I don't want to do math. I don't. The other great thing from the broadcast was the little graphic that they had, the visual that they had to explain brake bias. That was very helpful. I appreciated that. If you guys didn't see, they basically made a mock-up of like a graphic of the car, and you could dive in and see how they turn the brake bias and what that actually does and how it changes putting bias from the front to the back tires. Loved that. I'd love to see more of that. They included the podium. That's a big deal. When do we ever see IndyCar podiums on TV? Very excited to have seen that. I want to see more of that. I think they can continue to look better. Visually, IndyCar podiums are quite boring, but I obviously understand they don't have the money F1 has to like build podiums like that, so better than nothing. It was cool to see, and we got a little BTS, almost cool down room vibes, which I appreciated. I want to see more of that. Side note before we get into the thing, I love how they had Tamara and her husband from the Real Housewives of Orange County as the like marshals saying start your engines. Love that. I'm a Housewives fan, and I loved how they had the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City there last year for part of their cast trip. So I'd like to see more of that. More Housewives and IndyCar. That's my intersection. I'd like to see more of that. Now, the cutoff. Oh, bad. The worst case scenario. I thought that TSN had just crapped out because that kind of happens semi-occasionally, which I really don't appreciate. Though, also, I just realized, guys, if any of you are in Canada and you watch IndyCar on TSN Plus and you also get Crave, don't pay for them separately. Pay for them together. IndyCar, TSN Plus itself is like $9 a month. Crave itself is like $20 a month. I'm paying $28 a month to get both now. And you don't just get TSN Plus, you get TSN included. Because if you can buy TSN Plus separately, and that's what I had been doing now, it's only $28 a month for all of that. Deal. Do that if you watch IndyCar and you also like Crave. Anyways, so I thought it was a TSN issue. Turns out it wasn't. I don't know exactly what it was. I don't think it was super clear. But essentially the entire broadcast shut off. I think IndyCar on Fox themselves said that it was an issue with power to the broadcast truck. I'm not sure if this is really a Fox issue, a thermal issue, or just a coincidence, just a fluke bad thing that happened. But that's like absolute worst case scenario. At least it happened this weekend and not last weekend, because I think that would have been a huge blow to the confidence of everybody at Fox. They got it up and running quick enough. The IndyCar radio still worked, so I was listening to that just to get some hints. But yeah, really not acceptable. Like really not acceptable. I hope they get that figured out and that doesn't happen again. But it was kind of funny to hear them as they came back. I don't know if everybody heard this, because I think the feed I get when I'm watching the races, I don't get commercial to see everything. Commentary leaves, but I think that's because I'm like international, not watching it in the States. But we got to hear them having a little bit of fun in the booth as we were slowly coming back. We got to hear Hinch's Christopher Walken impression. I'd like to hear more of that. That was quite fun, just to hear them all having fun in the booth there. They all seem to have great chemistry. Again, I have no complaints about the people in the booth. Pit lane reporters do a fantastic job, but speaking of that, I really need to know if Hinch has watched Severance. Hinch, if you're watching this in any way, can you tell me if you've watched Severance? And can you let me know what your thoughts are on Severance? Because I just finished it, and I need to know your opinion. I feel like his answer is no, I haven't seen it, I'm busy. Dude, you're on planes so often, like you could watch Severance on the planes. I think you should, and I'd like you to address this in the next off-track episode. Thank you very much. Okay, I think that's all I have to say about the broadcast. Let's get into thermal itself, and I think I'm going to make a lot of fans mad because I think my opinion differs from a lot of you. The consensus seems to be that fans don't like thermal. They don't like it because, I saw somebody say it reminds them of Monaco. Well, first of all, the racing was obviously better than Monaco. I'm sorry for the lighting. If you're watching this, the sun is going down. I can't fix that. Monaco. So it exists. The racing's obviously better than Monaco. Like, you can't say that's not true. Did you see what Lundgaard and Palou are doing? That couldn't happen in Monaco. That also doesn't happen often in other IndyCar circuits. So I don't think you can say that. And also if it's Monaco in the sense that it's like the inaccessible one that actually brings a lot of money and is like a necessary evil, like, yeah, absolutely. I also don't think it's necessarily like fair to call those things evil. I think they're just necessary. And like, motorsport is expensive. You need people with a lot of money who are willing to fund it. Same for F1, same for IndyCar, same for any racing. I think if you have a problem with that and you can't reconcile that, maybe racing is just not for you. I understand the gripe, but it's just literally how it is. And if that's something that's going to be very upsetting to you and you can't reconcile that, I think you've got to find a different sport. And I also think you'd be hard pressed to find a sport that is not that way. As much as sports like are for the people, and IndyCar especially feels maybe more so for the people, like you need money to fund it, and IndyCar needs money. IndyCar specifically like needs money. They need funding, they need sponsors. If this event does that, I have no complaints. I guess we'll stay on this line. Like, yeah, you can't escape money. And I think it's actually kind of a good thing that we have an event for the rich people, because then they'll come and they'll spend their money and we need it. I don't think we're gonna like get them out to the middle of nowhere and like Barber, like, that's not gonna happen. I don't think we're gonna get them, like, they're not coming to Mid-Ohio. You know what I mean? I don't even know if they'd want to come to Detroit for a street race. So if we have to have a race in a private club, I don't think that's the end of the world. I also don't think it's a huge deal that maybe it's inaccessible. I think a lot of IndyCar races are very accessible. They're much cheaper than F1. Obviously, I don't want to say they're accessible to everybody because there's still a cost barrier there, and there's a location and distance barrier there. But if I'm remembering correctly, this is in addition to the calendar. It doesn't take away. It's not like we're not racing somewhere because we're racing here. So it's not taking away accessibility. It's not. And if there's one race out of this season that's like particularly inaccessible and it makes the other races more accessible, that is what I would call a necessary evil. And I think we've got to like balance out the scales here a little bit. And there was something else I wanted to say about that, but I can't remember now, and I didn't write it down, so hopefully it'll come back to me. But back to the money thing a little bit. Rossi, if you listen to Off Track, he said last year that like it seemed to be a successful event. He can understand why maybe it was not pleasurable to watch as a TV viewer, which I also think this year was much more pleasurable to watch as a TV viewer. It felt like an IndyCar race to me. But he seemed to think that it was successful in bringing the rich people there and having them spend their money there and having business deals done there, and that's important. So I don't know how we complain about that. I remember what I was going to say, and this ties to another point I have. It's filling a gap in the calendar. And I've seen people complain about this as well with St. Pete being so early. It's so early because that's the only time St. Pete will let IndyCar race there. That's not an IndyCar thing. That's beyond IndyCar's control. That's just when St. Pete will let them race. And then I understand the gap is annoying. This is filling the gap. Same with Texas. People were complaining about racing in Texas for whatever reason. Either it's because they want to be racing at the Texas Motor Speedway, or they want to be racing at this other oval, or they want to be racing somewhere else. You couldn't race in any of those other places, like, period, a little bit. We're not racing there for a reason, because either it's like NASCAR is in the way, they're not letting us race there. Funding is an issue which this race is attempting to address. But we're not racing on those other places for a reason, and it's not just because IndyCar is stupid. And if you're like, you're complaining about that, and you're complaining about the gap in the calendar, and this and the new Texas race in Arlington are filling the gap in the calendar, and you're complaining about them, I think you people just like to complain. I really do. And like, I get it because it comes from a deep love of the sport. But I think if you love the sport, you'd want it to grow, and you'd understand a little bit more how that has to happen. Like, things have to change for it to grow. It can't keep going the way it has been, because that obviously isn't working. So that kind of hit onto the points I wanted to hit. We're at Thermal for a reason, because that's where the rich people are. That's where they're willing to go. And we're not other places for a reason, because NASCAR literally blocks us out from racing places. Funding is an issue at other places. And I think Thermal specifically is addressing a lot of those things. Another thing I want to mention, sorry, I'm getting like angry and out of breath. Another thing I want to mention is that, like, you can blame IndyCar for some of the issues. I don't think a lot of this part is in their control. It's really not. I think we'd be racing in Mexico if we could. Mexico doesn't want us there. A lot of the other circuits need funding to have them improve. We don't have the money. IndyCar doesn't have the money. We need to get that somewhere. And so some places where we can blame IndyCar that maybe made this race not the most fun and made St. Pete not the most fun is actually more so Firestone than IndyCar specifically, and that's a tire issue. Rossi has been mentioning on Off Track that they had made changes to the tires, and they've made changes to strategy, or the length of the races, to increase tire deg, to try to increase the number of pit stops to make things more interesting and prevent just pure fuel saving races, which also, like, this wasn't a fuel save race. So even a lot of the great circuits are fuel save races. So, like, there's something here for that. Anyways, so Firestone for St. Pete attempted to make they went with a softer tire compound than the year prior, forgetting or not considering the hybrid, which is making everything heavier, which degged the tires even more. That, like, I guess if you want to blame IndyCar for anything, blame them for those issues, which are maybe making the races less fun than they could be. But even still, that was a Firestone problem. That wasn't an IndyCar problem. And everything, like, it's always a work in process. Things aren't perfect. Even, like, Pirelli doesn't always get everything right in F1. Like, there's a constant evolve that is happening, and we need to, like, appreciate. And it's also a balance. You can't get everything right. And I also don't think that thermal is a misstep. Like, we need the money, period. If the money comes from here and it makes everything else better, that's a balance I think a lot of us are willing to take, but I don't know why we're not thinking of it that way. And, like, we need eyes on the sport. Maybe you don't think that this event will put more eyes on the sport. I think I disagree. I think it puts the eyes with money, which is the eyes we need on the sport. The other eyes will come from that. See, like, Arlington as an example, Texas as an example. And even people are complaining about that. Arlington is a race we need. I think, like, maybe you don't love the Miami Grand Prix, but I think it's a successful event. And if we have one inspired by that, it's going to hopefully look better, look painted. It's near a stadium. People can go to there easily. I think that's a good thing. Anyways, you've complained then. People have complained in the past. They're complaining about trying to fix the changes. Like, maybe you'll just never be happy, and maybe you like to complain, and, like, sure. But, like, don't take it out on all of us. Okay, rant over. Let's see if they've updated the standings on the IndyCar website yet. They have. Okay, let's chat about that now. So, Alex Palou still in P1, expected, of course. He won both of the races. Pato O'Ward up to P2. Gap is 102 to 63 points. That's already, like, a pretty decent gap. Then it's pretty tight after that. We have Scott Dixon in third with 61 points. Christian Lundgaard in fourth with 60 points. I'm happy to see that. Then Felix Rosenqvist with 56 points. Kirkwood, Newgarden, Herta, Rossi. So see, even, like, Newgarden wasn't too impacted by this poor weekend from Penske. Scott McLaughlin down in P10, probably for sure bumped down this weekend. Anything else that stands out? Louis Foster last. Yeah, that sucks for him. I think he qualified decently, had a hybrid issue, couldn't get going in the race quite well, but got there eventually. So obviously that's unfortunate for him. I lap P24, Schwartzman P21. So I think from that perspective, that's already a success for Prema. They're not last. That's a success. Anything else of importance to note in here? Not particularly. Will Power down in P14 with 33 points. That might be a bit of a hurdle to overcome. I think we're stupid if we're betting against Alex Palou. So I'm not going to ever bet against Alex Palou. I've learned my lesson, for now at least, until something changes. I don't know. Happy to see Pato up there with 63 points. I think his weekend in St. Pete was not representative of where it could be. It's giving me Ferrari vibes a little bit, but at least McLaren here have recovered and Ferrari haven't, but whatever. All right, the lighting has just gone atrocious now if you're watching this, so I apologize. We're done now. Thank you for watching and or listening. And by the way, if you're watching this on YouTube and you'd like to listen to it only, this is on all podcasting platforms if you're interested. And if you're listening to this on podcasting platforms, this is also posted on YouTube, though I can't guarantee that the lighting looks good. Sorry about that. Hopefully that'll be better next week. It's only getting better from here as the sun rises later. So if you're only interested in IndyCar, next race you see that the lighting will be better. Even if you're interested in F1, because I also do F1 reviews. That'll be getting better because we have a week off break. So I'm just rambling now. Thank you for listening. Please follow, subscribe, comment, like, rate, review, all of the things. I hope you enjoyed my rambling here, and I will catch you for the next IndyCar race.